that first. If you think about your sales reps, they all have territories, and I make the analogy here to it's almost like a galaxy or a universe in which you live, and you've got to figure out, each of your sales reps have to figure out, how am I going to tackle that in the first place? And that's a very basic kind of, everyone's talking about big ideas. That's a big idea that you guys can think about right now is, if you go to your reps and say, how are you tackling your territory? If they don't have a good answer, that's step number one. Create some kind of a business plan for your territory. Now that we've figured that out, how do we identify who the right people are to target within those accounts that we think we have a high probability of doing business with, based on characteristics of other accounts? So how do we find the folks? How do we find out where they fit in the org chart? I've heard a couple of different speakers talk about this. This is critically important. Because what ends up happening is you probably get a lot of marketing leads dumped on you. Who feels like they have a lot of marketing leads dumped on you? Okay? Who wishes they had a lot of marketing leads dumped on them? You're just cold callers, right? We don't have hardly any. But no one knows what to do with these marketing leads. And what ends up happening is, typically speaking, the people who do that marketing activity are not going to be your buyers. It's going to be somebody else in the organizational structure. But what happens is there's an SLA between marketing and sales that says, okay, inside sales, you guys have to call my leads, or you have to call my leads this often. So they go, okay, great. I call up, I say, okay, hey Larry, I leave a voicemail, Steve, Richard, Vorsight. I see that you downloaded XYZ white paper. Thanks a lot, take care. Hang up, task myself out 30 days in my CRM tool. And now all of a sudden that thing kind of disappears, or I finally get Larry on the phone, and to use one of those terms from yesterday, I got a no-po. One of those no-po folks, right? So we got to look at the org chart. We got to figure out who reports to who and get to the right person. This is how you use your tools to do this sort of thing. Huge, important. If you were in my session yesterday, you know this. Direct lines. Critically important. There are 4 big reasons why. Number 1 is caller ID. So if you look at if someone calls you inbound and you look at your caller ID, if they call you through the switchboard, it looks different. And in the day and age of all the calls that are going on, are you going to pick that up? Or are you going to let that go to voicemail? So the direct line is so critically important. There are 3 other reasons. I'm not going to waste your time. But we did a little research at our company at Vorsight, because we also have an outsourced lead gen team, about 20 people that are doing outsourced appointment setting. And we said, let's look at a cross-section of reps. Let's look at 6 of our reps. And we always said empirically, sort of qualitatively, like, direct lines are important. We really didn't know how important they were. And then we did this. I actually didn't do this. One of my colleagues, Eric Young, did this. And literally counted, of all the people that they're trying to contact, what percentage of those folks do we have a direct line versus having a switchboard number? And the numbers blew us away. Absolutely blew us away. There's a direct correlation, clearly. I'm no statistician here, and I did not collaborate with MIT on this. The InsideSales.com guys, Ken, please, and David, let's get a real study on this. But it was pretty dramatic, at least to us. So, basic information. You got to know who you're calling. You got to figure out where they sit in the org chart. You got to have their direct line. You have to figure out where they're located, right? And I'll leave a name nameless, but I was doing a sales call with a software company the other day that was trying to sell me their services, and they're actually here today. And when I got on the call, this was probably the 4th or 5th call, and it was, quote unquote, their closing call. They thought they were going to close me down. They were ready to close me down. I was through the demo and everything. And the manager gets on the phone and goes, Steve, where are you located? And this is after about probably a month and a half of talking to them in the sales process. And you can almost see the reps that were engaging me going, ooh, on the other end of the phone. They know better than that. So prospecting and getting all this information, whether you're hunting, whether you're farming, if you're trying to go broader and deeper in an organization, is like assembling a puzzle. And I wish I could sit here and say that there is this beautiful pixie dust that I could sprinkle across all of you and that's going to solve all of your problems through your tools. There's not. And it depends on your organization and who you're trying to sell to. Ultimately, for most of the client work that we're doing, we find that Inside View is getting us about half of the way there, at least for us. So you're getting these puzzle pieces, but then you're combining those puzzle pieces with actually making calls into the organization, to the switchboard operators, the administrative assistants, and all that, to gather the intelligence about what's going on within that company. So, advanced info, tons of vendor noise and vendor static out there in the marketplace. We know that there are so many people who are going after these folks, and it's like the TV at late night and goes, or at least it used to. Now they just run infomercials on loops or something. But how do you figure out what you're going to look at? And most messaging like that, email and voicemail messaging, it sucks. I'm sorry to say. If any of you have had any of your reps leave you voicemails or send you emails as if you're a prospect, you'll see there's not a whole heck of a lot of customization going on. And it looks and sounds like snow. And I get solicitations all the time from all over the place because I'm a business owner, right? People are trying to sell me, but it looks and sounds like this. We got to get out. I love the outside the box comment there a minute ago. That was fantastic because the box doesn't exist for the best reps, so we got to think like that. Also, gather some financial information. It's not hard to get, right? And financial information, the 10Ks and the 10Qs, and what the analysts are saying and all that sort of stuff, you can just, it's fantastic. You can just read an analyst report on a company. There's your sales pitch. You can figure out, because the analysts are paid to poke holes in what the CFO says. And there's your risk factors, and companies are thinking about risk. So what are the financials? What's the new, latest, greatest, hottest news and things that are going on that we can capitalize on, right? Because what's hot in the organization for them that we're going to be thinking about? What are our trigger events? What's our key information? So you want to, basically what you're doing is you're assembling, you know who your customers are. You know what they look like. You're trying to find other people that look like them and then profile them. And once you've got them profiled, you have a much, much higher probability of selling them. It ends up being like a sniper shot. And I'm going to use an example of Angie back there from Merrill because we did work together. And there's a story about how they sell to mergers and acquisitions executives that are about to do an M&A deal, and they sell a SaaS product to them. And for people who have to go through a bunch of documents, they review it on them. And she saw that there was a trigger event, that there was an acquisition happening of one company acquiring another. So she said, this is great. So next thing she does is she goes to LinkedIn. She identifies who the correct merger and acquisition executive is, M&A exec or business development exec, and she goes into the voicemail system, we talked about this yesterday, and figures out how to get the direct line by their little codes in the voicemail system that you can use to get the direct line. Now she's got the direct line, she's getting a little bit further, she starts stalking this person. There's not a long window of this M&A cycle, right, for where they can buy her product. Email, voicemail, email, voicemail, email, voicemail. Finally, she gets a call back from somebody else saying, we're not interested. But when the person called back saying not interested, direct line shows up on the caller ID. So she said, I'm not done because no box exists for me. There's no box. So I call him back. She calls him back and says, look, you're in the middle of this exactly like this other customer that I was talking to before. And it's an approach called the P.T. Barnum approach. We say, you got to see it to get it. That's all I'm asking you. Take a look at it. We said, all right, fine, I'll take a look at it. That turned into a $150,000 piece of business for her in 2 weeks. That was a hard no. She turned it into a $150,000 piece of business. So all this information, when used effectively, goes places. All this information, if your reps don't know how to use it, it's not worth anything. It's worth the dirt under the rug. It doesn't make any sense. So let's do one. Enough hearing about me and talking. So, Bill, you want to come up?